I was fired in less than 5 minutes. No warning, no explanation, just cold, practiced words from someone who thought I was disposable. But the thing about underestimating people like me is that it always comes back to bite you. I remember the exact moment it all began. It was a Thursday morning, 8:12 a.m., and I was standing by the third-floor espresso machine, waiting for the last few drops of oat milk to slide into my travel mug. The office was quiet, that comforting lull before the rush of meetings and Slack pings. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. 9:30 a.m., internal prep, Paragon Global deal. I had spent the last 7 months leading that negotiation, a $50 million cross-border partnership that could take our company global. I had flown to Zurich twice, coordinated across 5 time zones, and rebuilt the deal structure from scratch when their legal team backed out last minute. I was proud of that work, not because I needed the praise, I hadn't had much of that in years, but because I knew how much it mattered. I was halfway through stirring my coffee when Ethan walked in. He didn't say good morning. He didn't even glance my way. He moved like he owned the place, and in some ways, he almost did. Ethan Sinclair, 27 years old, freshly imported from a failed startup and conveniently the CEO's nephew. He'd been in the office less than 3 months, and already he had his nameplate outside a corner office and a small army of sycophants whispering about next-gen leadership. He paused by the fridge, grabbed a protein shake, and without looking at me said, "Brooklyn, I need you in HR. Now." That was it. No context, no smile, no eye contact. I blinked. HR? Yeah, he said flatly. You'll want to bring your laptop. I stared at him for a beat, trying to read the tone, the motive, anything. But his face was unreadable, detached, like he was reading from a script he didn't write. Still confused, I followed him down the hall, the ache in my chest tightening with every step. I passed familiar desks, people I had mentored, teams I had built. No one made eye contact. When we entered the HR office, Marlene, our head of people, was already there. She didn't smile either. "Brooklyn," she began, "this won't take long." That's when I knew. "We're making some strategic shifts," Ethan cut in, arms crossed. "And your role has been deemed redundant in the new structure." Redundant. I had been at this company for 11 years. I had built the entire client services department from nothing. I'd negotiated over 100 contracts, saved more clients than I could count, and worked through holidays while holding back tears during my divorce. And now I was redundant? I felt my body tense, every cell vibrating with a mix of rage and disbelief. But I didn't give him the satisfaction. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I looked him straight in the eye, smiled, steady and polite, and said, "Understood." That was the moment I stopped being afraid. I packed my things in silence. My team watched from behind their screens, shifting uncomfortably, sensing something wasn't right. I gave a quiet nod to the junior associate I had trained last year. She looked like she wanted to cry. No one said a word. I walked out of the building without looking back, but inside, I was burning. Not with hatred. Not yet. It was something else, something deeper. A single question repeating in my head. Why now? Why will you fire me without warning just days before the most important deal in our company's history? And why did it feel like he hadn't thought it through? The drive home was a blur. I don't remember the lights. I don't remember the radio. I just remember gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. My hands were shaking, but my face, calm. Too calm. That kind of calm only shows up when your brain is in shock. I pulled into my driveway and sat there for a long time, staring at the front door like it belonged to someone else. 11 years. I had given that company more of myself than I'd given to anything or anyone. Birthdays missed, vacations canceled, answering client calls with my laptop open on hospital waiting room chairs. I wasn't just invested, I was ingrained. And I was let go like I was temporary. I changed out of my work clothes, made a pot of coffee, and sat on the couch, still in a daze. The silence in my apartment was loud, too loud. I kept replaying Ethan's words in my head. Your role has been deemed redundant. The way he said it, like he was reading off a cue card. Like someone had told him to say it and he didn't fully understand what it meant. But what gnawed at me more than the dismissal was the timing. I wasn't just working on any deal, I was leading the deal. The Paragon Global contract wasn't a project I had inherited. I had built it. I'd spent months navigating cultural nuances, foreign legal frameworks, and a notoriously picky executive team. We were days away from the final signing. I was the only one on our side who had direct access to their leadership. And yet, I was gone. Why? I picked up my phone and stared at the screen. No missed calls, no messages. Not from HR, not from the CEO, not even from the team I led. The silence was telling. Then, at 7:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Brooklyn? I froze. It was Graham Whitmore, the CEO. I just found out what happened, he said, his voice tight with anger. Why the hell weren't you in the Paragon call this morning? Because I don't work there anymore, I said flatly. There was a long pause. Ethan fired you? He asked, like he couldn't believe the words, even as he spoke them. Apparently my role was no longer needed. Another pause, then the sound of papers being shuffled, drawers opening, a quiet curse under his breath. Jesus, he muttered. Did he even read the Paragon contract? I sat upright. What are you talking about? You're the designated negotiator on the deal. That clause was added specifically to protect the integrity of the agreement. After what happened with the Corel merger, we couldn't risk another last-minute personnel switch. I blinked. So, no one else can finalize it? Not without your signature. Not legally. Not diplomatically. Paragon insisted on it. They liked your approach, said you made them feel understood. I said nothing. He continued, voice lower now. Brooklyn, he didn't read the contract. Ethan just shot himself in the foot. A strange feeling stirred in my chest. It wasn't satisfaction. Not yet. But it was something close. I had been treated like a pawn, but now it was clear. I was the keystone. The whole deal was balanced on my name, my relationships, my work, and Ethan, he had no idea. I'll be in touch, Graham said quickly. I need to handle this. The call ended. I set the phone down slowly and stared ahead. The anger I thought I'd buried began to simmer, not hot, fiery rage. No, this was colder, sharper, more focused. He didn't just make a mistake, he exposed himself. And now, he was scrambling. I took a slow sip of coffee and felt something shift deep inside me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. At 8:02 a.m. the next morning, my phone started buzzing. First, it was a call from Ethan. I didn't answer. Then HR, legal, marketing. One after the other. Missed calls stacked up like bricks, and I let every single one of them go to voicemail. My inbox flooded with messages marked urgent in all caps, but none of them included an apology. Not even a hint of acknowledgement, only panic. And panic was a language I understood well. I made a second cup of coffee and sat in the exact same spot on my couch as the night before. The sunlight poured in through the window, casting long lines across the floor, but I felt no warmth, only clarity. Ethan had made a fatal error, and the company knew it. By 9:17 a.m., the name I hadn't seen in over a year lit up my screen. Chloe Morales. Chloe and I had been close when she was on my team. She transferred to marketing after a promotion, and though we drifted apart professionally, I always trusted her instincts. Brooklyn, she whispered when I picked up. You are not going to believe what's happening right now. Try me. Graham just walked into the main conference room mid-meeting, carrying the Paragon contract. Ethan was there, trying to bluff his way through the final prep with the exec team, and Graham he slammed the binder on the table and asked one question. I didn't breathe. Did you read this before you fired Brooklyn? She said, voice trembling. Everyone went dead quiet. I closed my eyes, imagining the room. And Ethan, she continued, he tried to spin it, said something vague about realigning strategy and how we needed more agile roles or some garbage. But Graham wasn't having it. He flipped to the clause. The clause. The one that names you the sole negotiator. Of course he did. I'd fought to have that clause added after the Corel disaster, where a last-minute personnel change nearly cost us a multi-million-dollar client. Graham had backed me then, and clearly he hadn't forgotten. Ethan went pale, Chloe added. Like I've never seen someone drain color that fast. It was bad. I exhaled slowly. What did Graham say? He said, and I quote, if this deal collapses, your position becomes negotiable. Then he walked out. I let the words sink in, feeling a quiet shift in the air around me. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about leadership, about competence, about everything we pretend companies care about but rarely act on, until they're forced to. Chloe hesitated. I don't know what you're planning, But everyone's watching. I thanked her, ended the call, and sat motionless for a long time. My phone kept buzzing, voicemails, texts, desperate pings on LinkedIn from people who'd ignored my emails just last week. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a blank email draft, addressed it to Graham. Typed 3 lines. I'm willing to return to assist with the Paragon negotiations under specific conditions. Please confirm a time to meet privately before I re-enter the office. Brooklyn Harris. I hit send. Then I stood, got dressed, and put on the same heels I wore the day I signed the Zurich terms with Paragon. When I arrived at the office just past noon, I didn't take the back stairwell like I used to. I walked straight through the front lobby. Every eye followed me. The receptionist nearly fell over herself. Miss Harris, Brooklyn. Mr. Whitmore is expecting you. The hush that fell over the floor was unmistakable. Desks stilled. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. I walked past them all, the same people who'd kept their heads down when I was escorted out. And I didn't flinch. Let them see me. Let them remember this. Graham was already standing by his office door when I arrived. Brooklyn, he said simply. I didn't smile. I didn't shake his hand. I just looked him in the eye and walked inside. His office smelled like oak and old tension. He closed the door behind us. I made a mistake, he began. I thought giving Ethan some real responsibility would help him grow. I didn't expect him to set fire to the house before learning how to hold a match. I sat down, legs crossed, steady. And yet, here we are. He sighed and slid a folder across the desk. I reread the contract, every word. You were right to insist on that clause. I nodded once. I'd like you to return, he continued, with full autonomy to finish the deal. And whatever conditions you need, we'll meet them. I let the silence hang, then replied, voice even, I'll come back. But I want it in writing, full control over Paragon, no interference from Ethan, and one more thing. He waited. This can't happen again, not to me, not to anyone. He met my gaze. You have my word. When I stepped back into the hallway, Ethan was standing at the far end, pretending to talk to someone. His eyes found mine. I didn't stop, didn't blink, but as I passed I saw it, the first crack in his armor, and I knew. This was far from over. I didn't come back quietly. I came back like a storm hiding behind calm skies. When I entered the boardroom at 12:58 p.m., 2 minutes before the Paragon team arrived, everyone inside stiffened. The room was filled with department heads and senior managers, most of whom had avoided eye contact with me just a week ago. Now they smiled too quickly, nodded too eagerly. A few chairs even shuffled to make space, as if proximity could erase silence. I didn't sit. I placed a single printed copy of the final contract, clean, annotated, and translated, on the table. Then I pulled out my notes and began reviewing quietly, page by page. I didn't need to speak. My presence was the statement. Outside the glass walls of the boardroom, I saw him. Ethan. Pacing. He looked agitated, like a kid waiting outside the principal's office. Every few seconds he peeked through the glass, then turned away. His phone in hand, tapping nervously, waiting to be needed, waiting for someone to come out and say, we can't do this without you. But no one did. At 1:03 p.m., the doors opened, and in walked the Paragon delegation. 5 people. Sharp suits, even sharper eyes. Leading them was their CEO, Hadi Al-Masri, a man known for his zero-tolerance approach to chaos. I greeted him in Arabic, his brows lifted, surprised, then softened with something close to respect. You remembered, he said with a faint smile. I never forget what matters, I replied. The meeting began, and it was flawless. We walked through every clause, every term, every translation. I anticipated their concerns before they voiced them, answered every question without checking notes, clarified legal phrasing, offered culturally specific alternatives. I had done this in my sleep for months, but today I did it with fire in my chest and steel in my voice. At exactly 3:11 p.m., we signed. Hands were shaken, documents exchanged, smiles shared. Paragon was ours. After they left, the room stayed quiet. Everyone looked at me like I had just pulled a plane from the sky and landed it on the roof. Graham approached, eyes lighter than I'd ever seen them. You saved it, he said, voice full of something close to awe. You saved us. I looked at him. I didn't save anyone. I just did what I was hired to do, what I should have been allowed to do without interruption. He nodded, understanding. No defense, no excuses, just recognition. I stepped out of the room, And for a brief moment, I saw Ethan again. He stood frozen near the elevators, face flushed, lips pressed into a hard line. We locked eyes, and for the first time, he looked unsure. Not angry, not smug, uncertain. Because he knew, everyone did, that what he tried to erase had just become the company's greatest win. But I didn't smirk, I didn't gloat, I just walked past him like he was exactly what he feared becoming, irrelevant. In the days after the Paragon deal was signed, the office shifted. People smiled more, laughed louder in the break room. Emails came with exclamation points again. On the surface, it felt like the company had taken a breath after nearly drowning. But beneath that calm, I felt something else. Pressure, like a floorboard ready to crack. Ethan had disappeared for a few days. On leave, according to the polite company-wide memo. No apology, no accountability, just a convenient vanishing act. I knew better than to believe he was gone for good. Men like him don't vanish, they reload. By the following Monday, he was back. Not in meetings, not in the spotlight, but around, present, hovering. I'd pass him in the hallway, and he'd offer a tight, mocking smile, as if we were co-stars in some twisted office drama only he could direct. I ignored him. I had work to do. I threw myself into rebuilding trust, meeting with shaken teams, clarifying goals, streamlining messy workflows that had suffered during the chaos. My calendar was full, my energy laser-focused. Until the first glitch. An email I sent to finalize a client's pricing tier bounced back. When I checked the thread, I realized someone had changed the document I'd attached. The numbers were wrong, wildly wrong, and the timestamp showed the edit had been made using my login from a workstation I hadn't touched in weeks. Then it happened again. A compliance form I'd submitted for a regional partner came back flagged, claiming I'd omitted required signatures. I remembered signing every field. I had the original PDF, but the one in the system? Completely blank. At first I questioned myself. Maybe I was rushing. Maybe I'd made a mistake. It happens. But then I found the email to HR, the one I had never written. It said I was struggling to manage stress post-reinstatement and asked to reduce my workload until further notice. It was signed with my name. Sent from my account. Except I didn't write it. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't clumsiness. It was war. A quiet war. I reported it immediately. IT ran a security check. No external breach, no malware, no phishing. The messages had originated internally, from shared terminals. Someone inside the company was using my credentials to make me look incompetent. And I already knew who. But I didn't say his name. Not yet. I needed proof. So I began to document every discrepancy, every glitch, every edited file. I created a secure folder, updated it daily. I started logging entry times, camera footage locations, even small details, like when Ethan's assistant started working late without any meetings scheduled. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't vent over drinks or whisper in elevators. I just waited. Let them think I was spiraling. Let them believe I was too tired, too rattled, too overwhelmed to see the threads. I had learned this strategy the hard way back in my first job out of college, when a senior director had tried the same game. He'd isolated me, fed the narrative that I wasn't a team player, and orchestrated a slow bleed until I walked away, humiliated and replaceable. But I wasn't 23 anymore, and this time, I was ready. Still, there were moments that cracked me. Like when I heard Ethan's voice in the conference room late one night, talking to a junior executive who didn't know I was nearby. "She's unraveling," he said casually. "Too much pressure. Paranoia. I think we need to start planning for succession in client strategy." The other voice hesitated, but she landed Paragon. Ethan laughed, and nearly lost it. "We can't bet the company on emotional outbursts and ego." I stood frozen just beyond the glass, heart thudding. It wasn't just sabotage. It was a campaign. He was turning my success into an illusion. One stroke at a time, like smearing fingerprints off glass until no one remembered who left the mark. That night, I sat alone in the glass strategy room, the same one where I'd signed Paragon, and stared out over the city skyline. The lights blinked without care, indifferent to the silent war I was fighting. And I thought, how many others has he done this to? How many strong, competent people have walked out these doors in silence, blamed for problems they didn't create? I remembered the names, colleagues who had vanished quietly, one after a realignment, another after an HR misunderstanding. No one ever questioned it. We just moved on. But not this time. Not me. This time, I would not disappear. The email came at 7:41 a.m. Subject line: Audit Review Final Session. Sender: David Lynn, Lead Internal Auditor. Message: Mr. Whitmore has requested your presence at the executive review this morning. I closed my laptop without replying. I had already decided I was going, not to defend myself. Those days were over. I was going to watch the truth come out. At 9 a.m. sharp, I stepped into the executive boardroom. The walls were glass. The tension was not. Graham sat at the head of the table, quiet and unreadable. David and 2 auditors were already inside, along with 2 board members I hadn't seen in years. At 9:06, the door opened. Ethan walked in. Late, of course. He looked surprised to see me. That smirk twitched at the corner of his mouth. "She's not on the audit committee," he said, settling into a chair like this was just another performance. "She's here at my request," Graham replied without looking at him. David started calmly. "Over the last 3 weeks, we've identified multiple instances of internal credential misuse, access to shared terminals, document tampering, unauthorized email dispatches. This is a waste of time," Ethan cut in. "She's upset because David didn't flinch. "Every digital breadcrumb led back to a device used almost exclusively by your executive assistant. Same IP address, same timestamps." Ethan shifted. "You're reaching. She's been unstable since she came back. Everyone's seen it." I looked him straight in the eye. "You tried to erase me," I said. "You sabotaged my work. You weaponized silence and let people assume I was the problem. But I tracked every step, every edit, every login. You didn't just try to destroy my credibility. You tried to rewrite history." Ethan's face flushed. "You're delusional." Graham finally stood. "No," he said, "she's not. You are." The room fell silent. "I gave you chances," Graham continued, voice low but firm. "Too many. I wanted to believe you could grow into this role, that maybe the ambition was real. But all you did was tear down the people who carried this company through its hardest seasons." He turned to the board. "The evidence is clear. He's not just a liability, he's a threat to the integrity of this company." David nodded. "Our recommendation is immediate termination." Ethan looked around the room, searching for an ally. He found none. "What? You're just going to take her word for it?" he snapped. "No," Graham said. "We're taking your actions for it." Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. The smirk was gone. All that remained was disbelief. Security was waiting outside the door. When he realized what was happening, his shoulders dropped. No final tantrum, no dramatic exit. Just quiet. He walked out of the room without a single glance back. When the door closed, no one moved for a moment. Then Graham turned to me. "I'm sorry," he said simply. I shook my head. "I don't want sorry. I want better." He nodded, slowly, thoughtfully. "Then let's make it better." And for the first time in weeks, I felt it. Not victory. Relief. Because the truth was finally louder than the lies. 2 weeks after Ethan's quiet exit, the ripple effects were still unfolding. His name was never mentioned in meetings. His office door stayed shut, untouched. But the energy inside the company had shifted. Lighter, clearer. Like the entire building had finally exhaled. I didn't celebrate, I worked. I reorganized the client strategy department from the inside out, streamlining systems, rebuilding fractured relationships, and quietly bringing back 2 talented team members who'd left under creative differences. I held open-door hours twice a week, and slowly people started coming in. Not just for tasks, for conversations. Some wanted advice, some just wanted to say thank you. One afternoon, Graham called me into his office again. "I've been thinking," he said, placing a folder on the desk between us, "about the future, and about who should help shape it." Inside was a new contract, Executive Vice President of Strategy and Culture, a role that didn't just report up, it reached across. My voice would help guide not just clients, but internal policies, hiring standards, even leadership training. I looked at him carefully. "Why me?" "Because," he said, "you've done more for this company in the worst conditions than most people do with a blank check and a safety net." I didn't give him an answer right away. Instead, I took the weekend. I walked the city, spent time with my sister, sat alone in the park and thought about the girl I used to be. The one who stayed silent to keep the peace, who smiled through unfairness, who believed her work would speak for itself if she just stayed quiet long enough. That girl deserved better, so I gave her better. On Monday I signed. Not because I needed a title, but because I wanted to change what leadership looked like from the inside out. I installed an anonymous reporting system, created a mentorship program, sat down with HR to rebuild how internal investigations were handled. And when someone came to me quietly, with a trembling voice, afraid to speak up, I listened, because I knew exactly what it felt like to wonder if anyone would. 2 weeks after Ethan's quiet exit, the ripple effects were still unfolding. His name was never mentioned in meetings. His office door stayed shut, untouched. But the energy inside the company had shifted. Lighter, clearer, like the entire building had finally exhaled. I didn't celebrate. I worked. I reorganized the client strategy department from the inside out, streamlining systems, rebuilding fractured relationships, and quietly bringing back 2 talented team members who'd left under creative differences. I held open door hours twice a week, and slowly, people started coming in. Not just for tasks, for conversations. Some wanted advice, some just wanted to say thank you. One afternoon, Graham called me into his office again. "I've been thinking," he said, placing a folder on the desk between us, "about the future and about who should help shape it." Inside was a new contract. Executive Vice President of Strategy and Culture. A role that didn't just report up, it reached across. My voice would help guide not just clients, but internal policies, hiring standards, even leadership training. I looked at him carefully. "Why me?" "Because," he said, "you've done more for this company in the worst conditions than most people do with a blank check and a safety net." I didn't give him an answer right away. Instead, I took the weekend. I walked the city, spent time with my sister, sat alone in the park and thought about the girl I used to be, the one who stayed silent to keep the peace, who smiled through unfairness, who believed her work would speak for itself if she just stayed quiet long enough. That girl deserved better. So I gave her better. On Monday I signed, not because I needed a title, but because I wanted to change what leadership looked like from the inside out. I installed an anonymous reporting system, created a mentorship program, sat down with HR to rebuild how internal investigations were handled, and when someone came to me quietly with a trembling voice, afraid to speak up, I listened because I knew exactly what it felt like to wonder if anyone would. This story isn't just about workplace drama. It's about dignity, about reclaiming your value when others try to strip it away. Brooklyn didn't win because she shouted louder. She won because she stayed grounded in who she was, gathered her strength in silence, and struck with precision when the truth was undeniable. In a world where power often protects itself, she proved that integrity, strategy, and quiet resilience can shift the balance. So what's the lesson? That professionalism is not weakness, that composure is not surrender, and that when you know your worth, you don't have to beg for a seat. You build your own table. If you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, or made to feel small in a space you helped build, this story is for you. You don't always get to pick your battles, but you do get to decide who you are in the middle of them. And sometimes, the most powerful move isn't to fight back in anger. It's to rise, calm, clear, and undeniable. Have you ever experienced something like this at work? What did you do?